Happy Sunday, everyone. Hope one out there is enjoying your weekend. It's been a pleasant weekend for many areas across the country. We did have a cold shot that impacted those areas into the East Coast. But other than that, for a good part of the country, they've experienced a southwest wind, and that is definitely a warm wind. And they're actually seeing well above average temperatures for a good chunk of the central US. But there is another cold blast that will be coming. It's starting to form up there in Alaska and as well as into Canada. That is the system that's going to be diving southeastward and actually bringing a renewed winter storm for those areas into the Pacific Northwest and in the intermountain regions, along with record-breaking temperatures across the central U.S. as that southwest wind will really start to crank heading into tomorrow afternoon. For your Monday, that's more of a downsloping wind. A west wind is typically your warmest wind, and you're going to see those temperatures spike in a big way, and records will be shattered across the board with those temperature anomalies approaching 30 above average, normally what you would typically see in the month of February. And even further north, you're looking at 35, potentially well above average temperatures. But there's the cold shot that will be building up there into good part of British Columbia, into the Northwest Territories. That is the system that's going to be really diving those temperatures down into the Pacific Northwest and start with the beginning stages of a snowstorm. It's not before. We got plenty of records that will be shattering on your day Monday. The National Weather Service continues to up the ante. Now they're forecasting 67 records broken just on Monday alone. Some places down there in Southwest Texas could see their first triple digit of the year, and plenty of 90s are starting to show up on the map. You're talking about into the top 5 of some of the hottest temperatures they've seen in the month of February since records began. That's the kind of heat we're talking about. And that heat continues to surge in that warmth across the middle of the country, 70s across Nebraska into those areas in Missouri, but even 70s going all the way to Illinois, into Iowa. I mean, you're talking areas into Minnesota, high 50s for high temperatures, as those records will continue to break, shatter records. But we do have a cold blast, and that's going to bring a significant winter storm for those areas along the Pacific Northwest. So it's the beginning stages. It's impacting areas in and around Seattle this afternoon, in and around the Cascades. The heavier snows will be starting to fly. But once it continues to move on into Monday morning, that's when it's going to be approaching the Boise region in Idaho and eventually head off into Salt Lake City by the time we head into Monday afternoon into your Tuesday morning overnight time frame, with some heavy snow squalls in its wake. So yeah, we're looking at potentially a significant winter storm starting to build, heavy snows across the Cascades, but those snowfall rates will drop 1 to 2 inches per hour at times, with blowing and drifting snow. So those snow squalls continue to impact those areas into the Great Basin region, into the Rockies, with some flash freezes because the temperature gradients are going to be extreme. You're talking about a 40 to 50 degree drop, just like that. That's the kind of cold blast we're talking about. And much colder air will filter in behind the front, as very windy conditions will be out ahead of behind the front as well. But out ahead of it, that's the warm sector, and that's where all the record-breaking temperatures will unfold. So there's the setup on the temperature anomalies going into your Tuesday afternoon. In the warm sector again, you're plenty warm down there further into the southern plains, into the Ohio Valley. Look at that, 30 below above average temperatures continues for those areas, but look what's lurking. That's the temperature gradient behind it, with 20 to 30 above and 20 to 30 below. So it's going to be a sharp change to the body, with almost dealing with heat advisories, and then you're going to be dealing with wind chills behind that front, with some snow in its wake. But we got more records to break and shatter heading into your Tuesday. So you got 53 alone just on Tuesday. So combined, right now, they're forecasting 120 records broken just for those 2 days, folks. These are daily records, right? Some of these areas have been keeping track of, recorded temperatures 125 years. You got to go back a long time, folks. So this is the kind of heat we're talking about that's coming at the end of February, and many records are going to be shattered, broken, that's been in place for about 100 years or so, potentially in some of these areas, as that surge of warmth lifts all the way into the Rockford, Illinois region, and even all the way into Michigan. Look at those 60s showing up on the map for February, folks. That is insane stuff. But look what's trailing back behind it. There's the cold blast, and you're talking high temperatures in the teens up there in Montana, back into the Dakotas, and drifting into the 20s once you get into areas into South Dakota, feeding into Nebraska. And it's going to bring some snow along with it, with these snow squalls. Some of these areas could pick up 1 to 2 inches per hour snowfall rates at times as this system will be moving through. So by the time you wake up on Tuesday morning, it's likely going to be impacting those areas in the Dakotas and further south, heading into Salt Lake City, as well as into the Rockies there. And if it continues, now we're talking it's going to tap into that warm sector, and that's where we got to be concerned about some of those turning severe as we head into the overnight time frame in Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. So we should have some thunderstorms starting to break out around the Illinois region, southern Wisconsin, there into Michigan, and then tailing southward into Missouri, as well as into portions of Oklahoma. I think once it gets towards Oklahoma, and especially there in Texas, they're going to have a strong capping inversion to limit any storm convection, because those areas are going to be plenty, have a stronger cap in place, and I think it's just not going to overcome and overtake that capping inversion. But I do feel it's going to overcome it, and supercell thunderstorms are going to be starting to break out, especially further north where that low pressure is, especially into those areas into southern Wisconsin, into central and southern Michigan, going into Indiana, especially into Illinois, and heading further south in Missouri, and then heading into portions of Oklahoma. The further south that you get on the tail of this front, that's where you're going to be starting to impact the capping inversion. But right now, the Storm Prediction Center has highlighted that slight risk for severe storms, and it does include further north in those areas into Milwaukee, all the way to Grand Rapids, into Detroit, down to Cleveland, through Columbus, as well as into Louisville. Does include the Chicago region, Indianapolis, as well as Springfield, down to St. Louis, heading into Springfield, Missouri as well, and then all the way down just north of Little Rock, and likely north of the Memphis, Tennessee region. That's going to be into the Tuesday night time frame. And then back behind it, yeah, folks, look what we're dealing with. So in Chicago, you had kind of like that inch of snow, I think just yesterday. And then, of course, all the heat that's coming in the next couple of days. And then back behind that, heading into Wednesday morning, yeah, we got more snow again, folks. This is the atmosphere we're working with right now. So you get this rapid change in temperatures of 40-degree spikes either side of it. And it's all going to end of like little snow again, not expecting much, but maybe another 1 to 2 inches. Those areas in Chicago, maybe into Milwaukee as well, heading into portions of Michigan. But out ahead of it, there's the warm sector. That's where we're concerned as it continues to move off to the east. Those could be strong to possibly severe, as well as far east as Ohio, heading into Pennsylvania and going into that Wednesday. So right now, there's nothing concrete from the Storm Prediction Center, but this is more or less probably going to be a gusty wind type setup, especially along the front there. But this is where the instability would likely unfold into western Tennessee, through Kentucky, as well as into West Virginia, through Ohio, getting into Pennsylvania, and heading up into New York with some stronger thunderstorms, definitely likely on the gustier wind variety, with some smaller hail to it. And there's the warm sector still. So those areas into the east are feeling the cool down for the weekend. And then you get the rapid surge of warmth again, and even your area could be experiencing some record high temperatures all the way to Maine, folks. This is Wednesday. We're talking 50s all the way into Maine, ahead of the warm sector again, going into New York. So there, even on Wednesday, about 14 record high temperatures could unfold during the day on Wednesday. And there's the cold shot back behind it. Look at Illinois, right? You're like 35 for a high, and you're going to be experiencing some mid-70 highs. So that's a crazy difference, 40-degree difference, and that's why you could see a little bit of snow during the day on Wednesday, because the temperatures are going to be cold enough. Likely going to be a wet snow, nothing to coat the accumulations or anything like that, but likely to see quick blast of 1 to possibly 2 inches of snow from this particular cold front. And yes, there is the snow coming in on the backside. Quick moving shot Wednesday night, likely some stronger borderline severe thunderstorms along this squall line as it moves through Tennessee, through Kentucky, heading up into Pennsylvania, into New York, and heading up into New England. And that snow squall will be moving in. So again, not expecting much snow, but likely another 1 to 2 inches across Pennsylvania. Those areas into New York, into Massachusetts, and Connecticut would likely see, about a 1 to 2 inch snow squall. But look what happens, folks. I mean, we go right back into the warm sector. As soon as that moves out, southwest winds blow back in, and the rapid warm up continues across the middle part of the country as we start the month of March. But look what happens too. We got another significant trough that will be diving in off the West Coast, and those areas are going to be rapidly dropping. So you're going to be seeing sharp temperature gradients across the central and eastern 2/3 along the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley, upper Midwest region, well above average temperatures again. Those areas across the west where they do have that trough coming down, well below average temperatures for a good chunk across the West Coast. Looking at the temperature anomalies again, I mean, again, it's just a rapid transition, folks. Could be next Sunday, and we do this all over again with 20, 30, 35, man, gosh, even maxing out 35, maybe even potentially 40 degrees above average for some of these areas across the Great Lakes. So that's going to be crazy warmth again, likely more records, potential records to be broken and shattered on even next Sunday after you get that cold blast coming through and that sharp rebound coming back. And the cold is really starting to be pressed into the West Coast. Those areas across the West Coast into California get soaked again along Washington and Oregon, and pretty much almost the entire state again of California gets plenty of rainfall. Once you move inland in some of the higher interior regions, all that will transfer back over to snow, back into Nevada, back into Utah again, through Idaho, back into Montana. That'll swing into Wyoming. That'll be during the day, but look where the dry slot is again, right? Where all that heat is. You're just under that kind of heat dome, if you will, even though we still technically are winter transition into meteorologically spring that does start that March 1st time frame. So yeah, it's going to be looking like a well above average temperatures to start the month of March, especially for the central and eastern 2/3, and much of the West Coast is still going to be hanging tough with winter weather and rainy weather for the West Coast. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update. Wire protect you before and after storm.